This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of January 15th, 2023. What's on my mind this week? Warrior Nuns and Widened Horizons. This week, I'm going to share an interesting experience that I've had. Last weekend, one of my friends, Siwa, reached out and asked I would just take a look at some data that she and some of her friends were trying to process for a cause that they cared about, trying to help build awareness and advocacy for a streaming network, a streaming platform, to pick up Season 3 of the TV series Warrior Nun, which was formally produced by Netflix before it was canceled. Now, I do enjoy a good chart, even on a Saturday night, so I agreed and I got introduced to a couple of her friends who happened to run, among other things, a Discord community in support of this cause. One thing led to another, and I joined their Discord server to see what was happening. First, I asked some questions like, what's the point of the campaign? What's the goal? Critically, what data do you have? The campaign was mostly working with Twitter data, which told the story of a passionate community rallying around an entertainment franchise that in many ways represented them to some degree. A brief aside about representation, because I think it's important. It sounds all fuzzy and fluffy and new agey, but representation is a real important, useful thing. When you see someone who looks like you or talks like you or lives like you, doing things you didn't know that you could, it's inspiring. It's important. When you see someone of your background in places of power, it gives you hope that you, your friends, and other people like you could also achieve those same great things. It's nice to be able to say, in the abstract, anyone can do X, anyone can become president, anyone can become a billionaire, anyone can be a successful actor, etc. But it's a whole lot more reassuring to see that an example has been set and a path defined that you can follow to reach that goal, right? For the fans of Warrior Nun, especially people who identify as female and non-straight, it is a franchise that's powerful and emotionally moving to them. So what I found in joining this community was two things, two very common situations. First, they did have some data, but not other data. That's fairly easily remedied if you have the right tools and access to the data. But the second thing was far more important, bringing the data to life in meaningful and powerful ways. This is a thing that, Fortune 10 companies struggle with. It is not uncommon. Data for data's sake, it's a waste of everybody's time. It's like stockpiling ingredients and never cooking anything. But when you put data to work, it's as valuable as gold. Let's look at a couple of examples. First, here's a simple chart of how many tweets have been sent out by the Save Warrior Nun campaign using Talkwalker's excellent media monitoring software. Right? That's fairly impressive, right? After all, in this day and age in public social media, particularly Twitter, getting people to do anything besides argue with each other is an accomplishment unto itself. But what do we do with this information? What do we do with this data? Well, here's the thing. Inside each tweet, inside any social media post is a treasure trove of information. It contains names, dates, content, topics, hashtags, times, mentions of other people. When you take that data and you deconstruct it, there's a lot to take action on. For example, this campaign wanted to branch out to reach people on other platforms besides Twitter. Again, with a good reason. How would you go about doing that? Well, the data's in there, right? So I wrote some code one night while laying in bed, which, as one does, to parse the Twitter bios of everybody using that hashtag. And did some simple filtering. Which Twitter bios had mentions of TikTok or Twitch or Instagram or YouTube, etc. That information, it's in there. That gets handed off to the appropriate outreach team. And believe me, these folks are crazy organized. They have different outreach teams. It's like being in a functioning business. So that data goes to the appropriate outreach team, and suddenly data that was static, right? Unmoving. It's just a table of data. It's now in motion. Someone's going to do something with the data, and that's super important, right? My friend Siwa, she's a Twitch streamer. So she suddenly had a list of people to reach out to and connect with who are also supporting the movement, because it's all the same hashtag, right? and also on Twitch. So instead of just a chart or a table, we've converted that data into action. The movement also needed some information, data on ways to prove the value of continuing the franchise should another platform choose to invest in it. Social media data is fine, right? It's good, it's a start, but we all know, again, particularly on Twitter, a hefty amount of it can be faked. Bots and stuff like that. Everyone and their cousin has gotten that bizarre Twitter reply or follow from some account with a name like, eggplant microscope 237811. And you're like, yeah, whatever. 6 million tweets in less than 30 days is cool. But what else could we find that would prove the value of the franchise to a potential acquirer, which is the stated intent of the campaign? If we thought about it like, go to investors with a pitch deck, what else could we find? This is where data like search data comes in handy, something that we work with a lot at Trust Insights. Search data is different than social media data. It's more valuable in some ways because we search for things all the time that we wouldn't necessarily ask other people or talk about to other people, right? Sometimes we wouldn't even confess some of our searches under duress, right? But search engines and SEO tools, they know that information. They understand that intent. So I decided to grab a basket of terms about the show, like the show name itself, Warrior Nun, along with intent-based terms like watch Warrior Nun, stream Warrior Nun, Warrior Nun Season 2, when is Season 3 of Warrior Nun coming out, etc. If the goal was to prove to another platform that the audience was growing, it was a worthwhile investment, then search volume could tell us that. After all, you could get a small but loud band of people to make a bunch of noise on social media for a short period of time, but faking search data to the planet's search engines over years, much, much harder to do. It's much more likely to be authentic data. So I put the keyword list through our predictive analytics platform and forecast out a year and change ahead, which you can see with that blue line there on the right-hand side, to see what the future might hold. That's a lot of forecasted growth, right? Even with a cancellation, that's forecasted growth. This movement has been on the rise for some time. This fan base has been on the rise for some time. Now, let's contrast that, because contrast is one of the fundamental principles of data analysis. We need to compare data to something else, with a show that didn't get canceled by Netflix, which is on the network, a show called You. While this show objectively has more search volume than Warrior Nun, the chart, see that yellow line, that's a Loess regression line, that chart's headed in the wrong direction. You don't need to be a data scientist to figure out that investing in growth in an audience that's growing is probably the better bet, right? If I were a betting man, I'd bet on that first chart before I bet on the second chart, because there's a fan base that can grow substantially. This data brings the movement to life in a credible way that a lot of noise on social media might not do alone. Some folks, particularly marketers, executives, folks who are somewhat digitally savvy, understand search data better than they understand social media data, even though both of them are forms of communication. When you see two sets of signals together indicating growth and dedication, it's worth paying attention to. Finally, the movement needed help getting more granular data and visualizing it. They have catchphrases, little slogans for each day of the campaign. The challenge is social networks, Twitter in particular, are rather parsimonious with their data. Now, Twitter's not alone here. Facebook's very parsimonious with their data. LinkedIn doesn't give you any. But at least with Twitter's API, you can extract it if you ask for small amounts of it very frequently, but ad hoc polls, like just going and saying, I want all 6 million tweets. Yeah, that's not going to happen. You're going to hit the query limits way before you get all the data. Fortunately, I've had the displeasure of dealing with Twitter's painful limits before, even before the change in management there. So I set up a batch process on my spare laptop to query the API every 5 minutes, extracting the data one tiny piece at a time, one little mug full of data at a time, right? And then wrote a piece of code to sew it all back together. And the result? Instead of being stuck with day-level data, which looks cool, we had hour-level data visualized really nicely each phrase and how quickly it decayed over time. Some content stuck around longer than other content did. So what does the data show? A highly engaged, highly motivated, and highly focused fan base. If you're a marketer trying to grow your streaming platform's appeal, do you want passive customers or do you want active customers? As a marketer, I want active customers. I want customers who are evangelists, because in this day and age of private social media communities where, my software, your software can't see or can't monitor these conversations, I need customers speaking on my behalf, right? I need customers who are ambassadors, bringing my brand, bringing my products, my services, my shows into places where I, as a marketer, probably not real welcome, right? So when you see an audience as engaged and as focused on spreading the message as the Warrior Nun community is, that is inspirational as a marketer, because that's an army that will help me grow my streaming platform if I worked for one, right? That movement is a force multiplier. Every dollar that I would spend on marketing could be multiplied to the same effect as $100, because you've got all this movement, this activity, getting our message into places we're not welcome. So I'd imagine my participation in this campaign raises several questions you might have. First, what's in it for me? Okay? After all, it's not like this is paying work, which is why I was doing it at night, so as not to take away from Trusted Insights paying clients. I did it partly because a close friend asked for help, and to the best of my ability, I try to help my friends. But above and beyond that, although, to be clear, that's a good enough reason by itself. There's something about movements and causes that makes it worth my time, and possibly yours. In the course of our work as marketers, our regular work, our day jobs, we end up, by design, doing a lot of the same things over and over again, and this is a good thing. Right? Recall last week's issue about best practices and recipes. You want to be following the recipes, standard operating procedures, etc. You want to create reproducible results as much as possible. But one of the criticisms of best practices that is valid is that they don't lend themselves to innovation. That is a true statement. Right? And that's where doing something like volunteering for a campaign or a movement comes into play. Donating my efforts to this is risk-free. Right? I can break stuff. I can write code that's on shaky ground that doesn't follow best practices. It's super messy, not documented. The sorts of things you don't want in production. I can try new things. I can experiment. I can work with data that I don't usually work with, or use data and tools that I do work with in new and different ways, in a different industry, different kinds of stakeholders than I normally work with. For example, during this campaign, I ran into a few different bugs with Twitter's API. Huge surprise. And some of the coding solutions I had to come up with were novel techniques, stuff I've never used before. And now that I know them, now I know how to do them, I have them in my toolkit for when similar situations occur in the future, and possibly for paying clients. Paying clients in the past have benefited substantially from random little things I've done on the side. I've had to level up my skills with ggplot, which made all these charts, right, in the R programming language, to make visualizations that were more on brand with the rest of the campaign, going from our Trust Insights charts. We try to make them look professional, right? Clean, clear. They're not entertainment charts, right? These, like dark mode charts with wild colors, optimized for online consumption rather than a PowerPoint or a printout. It's a whole new avenue for me to explore. And again, one that I've now got some experience with. So when I need to create different looking content now I know how to do that. I didn't before this. But more than anything, the passion and the energy of the Warrior Nun fandom brilliantly illustrates that organic social media can still work. And that's been the most eye-opening lesson for me in all of this. As a social media marketer, I've been in social media marketing since 2003, 20 years now. When we post business content, what happens? What does it get? A few likes, maybe a dozen retweets, a couple dozen if we force our employees to do it, 100 on a great day. When you have a highly engaged, energized, focused community, you see the real power of people working together. Right? I put up 2 tweets with some of these visualizations, and they earned more visibility and engagement in 6 hours than literally my entire Twitter account for the last 3 years. Think about that. That's crazy. It's crazy town. We often hear platitudes from social media marketing folks that organic social still works. And I'll be honest, I kind of gave up on it. I've never seen firsthand, never been part of something firsthand where it did work, where it fulfilled the dreams that the social media marketing gurus have been promising for years now, until a community of people decided they needed to get the message out and turned the dials to 11. They overwhelmed all the different AI algorithms in every direction. And social media, unpaid organic social media, works when you have a movement behind it, when a community decides it is going to be heard no matter what. It has been inspirational, to say the least. Finally, my final reason, what's one of the most fun and interesting things when you change jobs? That's right. You get to meet a whole bunch of new people, right? See things in a different light, learn from new people. But over time, you get settled in, that wears off, as it should. Again, best practices, right? You have standard operating procedures you have to follow, and your innovation, your knowledge gaining, it starts to slow down. When you join a movement like this, it's all the benefits of changing jobs with none of the pain or the pay. But you get to meet new people from all walks of life. You make connections you'd never make in a regular job, and you get tons of new ideas to work with. So I hope my tour of this time I've spent in this movement in just a week inspires you to do something similar in your own career. It doesn't have to be this movement. It can be literally anything where you can step outside the ordinary, step outside your comfort zone. You may find it incredibly rewarding, as I have. And any of my readers happen to work for a streaming service and would like copies of this data, feel free to hit reply on the newsletter. I know a community that would be very interested in hearing from you. What else have we got in the news this week? Besides the newly refreshed Google Analytics 4 course that we're constantly hawking, I would recommend the piece. I did a piece on Adobe Podcast, on a review of that software. If you are doing any work with audio or video, you will be amazed at what it can do to spoken word. My jaw dropped when I did some tests and stuff, so you'll want to check that out. Also got some stuff on ChatGPT, as does everybody these days, and a few other things. Did a great episode of the In-Ear Insights podcast this week, talking about the difference between data science and data analytics, so go check that out. In new jobs this week, what do we got? We've got analytics manager at Omnicom Tracking, digital analytics developer at VMware, head of content and social media at the Museum of Ice Cream. That's a pretty cool gig, right? Might not be great for your health in the long term, but that sounds like it would be pretty cool. Manager of analytics at ShopStyle, product owner of data at Charlotte Tilbury, senior data scientist at Microsoft, social media coordinator at Podglomerate. Let's see what else is in the news. We have some social media benchmarks by industry in 2023 from Sprout Social. We have some discussions about content at CES, tracking customers and revenue from SEO inside your CRM. The Google Analytics 4 course, again, some cool stuff in AI happening this week. Microsoft exploring the use of ChatGPT in Word, PowerPoint, and Outlook. That's a really cool idea. Think about that. You're writing a document and you're like, I don't know what to write. Ask the AI and see what it suggests. I think there's some really cool things in there. From our friends over at IBM, continuous learning stuff. And then in Dealer's Choice, hey, if you got a few minutes, sign that Warrior Nun petition for Season 3. A recipe for frikadellen or frikadeller, depending on whether you're speaking in German or French. That's one of those words that everywhere in the world, it has that same kind of pronunciation. Frikadelle, frikadeller, frikadeller, except in English. What do we call it? Hamburger. And of course, some data about Netflix subscribers and revenues by country. So upcoming events, I'll be at Martechopia in London in March this year, and B2B Ignite in Chicago in May. So if you're going to be at those shows, stop by, say hi, and stuff like that. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week.
If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.